Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, when did my skin start looking like this? For a lot of women, menopause doesn't just change your body. It changes how you feel in your body and your skin. That's where it usually shows up first. We've been told to fix it with products, to cover it up, to just accept it. But what if your skin isn't something you need to fight? What if it's actually trying to tell you something? Today's episode is all about menopause skincare, what's really happening under the surface, and how you could finally feel good in your skin again. And don't forget to hit subscribe to get more real insights. Keira, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I feel that most dermatologists stay in the lane of prescriptions and products, but you did something a little different, and you started asking questions about stress and hormones and even trauma. How would you say that that's redefined your practice, and what made you decide to step out of that traditional model and rethink the way skincare can be handled?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think many of us who come to these kind of, I guess, alternative or different ways of approaching things, it's kind of like when your own mess becomes your mission. And so about, I don't know, 13 years ago or so now, it was like my own health was falling apart. So traditionally trained in, it was the focus of my practice was skin cancer and melanoma, still board certified as a dermatologist. So then I was the one looking underneath the microscope to make the diagnoses of all the biopsies that we were doing. My own skin at that time was really starting to change, growing, changing moles, more atypical, until there was one that I had to diagnose as early melanoma. And that's a little bit horrifying when you know what to look for and then you can diagnose it underneath the microscope. And I remember getting my colleagues like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, is it really this, that? But they're like, yeah. And so that kind of was the wake-up call. And at the time I thought I was doing all the things right. As a woman, working and juggling young children. And I was trying to take care of myself. I was exercising, but I was over exercising. I was running ultra marathons, trying to eat clean, right? Doing all the right things, but realizing they weren't right for me. And what I came to learn was all of those were stressors in their various forms, and they were taking a toll on my overall health and well-being. But before I made that discovery, I was going to all my colleagues, trying to figure out what was going on, because first it was my skin, but then it was hormonal issues, gut issues, thyroid, all the things, all these things that seemed separate when in fact they were all truly connected. So going to various specialists, getting more medications, not getting results, just getting more side effects, and going to integrative, functional, chiropractor, homeopathy, like every so much time, so much money, and really not getting any progress until I don't remember what prompted me to take my first mindfulness-based stress reduction class. Like I wound up there, and that was my introduction to mind body medicine. And all of a sudden, all the dots started to connect. And I realized that all the symptoms, all the challenges I was having was my body's way of saying, 5-alarm bell fire here. We are mounting every possible resource we can to save you, to protect you. And the outcome didn't feel like it was protecting. It felt like my body was falling apart and betraying me. But it really awakened me to how the lived experiences that we have, the environments we find ourselves in, inside, outside, and in between the relational, have an impact on our physiology, our psychology, and just how we move through the world. And that really informed how I decided that I needed to practice this version of medicine that I am now, because I thought, if I'm a physician and I have been in medicine for over 20 years, and I didn't understand this. How is the average woman who doesn't have access to the same resources and in all the things that I had access to from a scientific lens, supposed to understand this. And so it really just changed the trajectory of how I approach every aspect of my life, and also how I want to be able to support women.
Well,
Yeah.
it's very interesting because you knew what to look for and you knew the questions to ask. So I'm glad you find it as you found it as hard as the patient does, because it's such a challenging time and you don't know when to ask the questions or to question the doctor.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, right, that whole when the doctor becomes the patient and you appreciate that labs might say you're normal, or you're just getting like, oh, this is just the how it is. And you're like, shoot, if this is normal and this is just how it is, like, I don't, like, what's the value in living this
Right?
life? Like,
Yes.
where's the benefit? Where's the joy? Like, I don't want to just slog through this. And so it really was an invitation, um, to get really curious of, okay, well, what else is there? What other places and spaces do I need to go in order to have a different experience? And that's how I found myself, amongst all the psychologists. And I've done tons of training over the last, I don't know, 8 years now. And everywhere, mostly Zoom boxes because they're virtual trainings. And I'm the only MD in the room. And on one hand, I feel honored and privileged to be there. And on the other, I'm like, how come I'm the only one here? you know, because we have so much available to us in terms of creating an integrative approach. And I guess that's the good news, right? You're never stuck. There is always a plan B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Yes.
The invitation is, how do we integrate it so it's like it's always a standard of both and. You may still need your medication, but we need to layer in this other piece so that maybe you don't need as much medication, so that the side effects aren't as much, or changing your relationship to have to needing a medication, right? Not as a failure, but as like a support and a resource. So,
Well, you said something before, your mess became your message. And I think for so many women, especially women in midlife, like that line really hits hard because, well, explain that phrase to me a little bit more.
yeah, I mean, when everything feels like it's hitting the fan, it's like
Yes.
falling apart. Um, you know, Unbeknownst to me, one of the hormonal issues I was having in my my mid to late 30s, my period started getting very wonky. I started to have a lot of heavy bleeding. I know, a little TMI, but like I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was, because I was running ultra marathons, my cycles might have just been off and all this stuff. What I came to find out later, after I chose to have a hysterectomy in my early 40s, I mean, it seemed like that was the only option, is that my body had responded to all the stresses by offering adenomyosis, endometriosis, and fibroids. I had no idea what was happening in the background. And what I've come to understand because of that experience, and I wound up doing a menopause mentorship and actually supporting other women in menopause with HRT, was that yes, there was the stress, but mid to late 30s, I didn't realize that I was already in that perimenopausal phase of life. So the natural decline of hormones that was part of my biology was being compounded by the stress on my body from the overexercising, not loving my job, juggling family, because all our hormones are derived from the same building blocks, and our body's always going to prioritize our survival. So the hormones that were more necessary than my sex hormones were my stress hormones, like cortisol. So all the symptoms were being exacerbated. So as my health, as I was learning all these things and realizing this is, again, if as a physician, I didn't know any of this, this is a big old mess. I'm in the very messy middle of a healing journey and the middle of my lifespan. How can I make sense of this? And making sense of it was first creating a virtual, menopause clinic. So that became the mission to help pay it forward, because understanding that there was so much misinformation about hormone replenishment therapy because of the Women Health Initiative study. And thank goodness for books like Dr. Avram, I have it, the Estrogen Matters book was such a pivotal book to kind of debunk a lot of the myths around hormone therapy. But what I found through that process is that even when women's hormones were getting more in balance, I think getting them more in balance gave them the bandwidth to realize there were so many other facets and layers in their life that were creating angst, anxiety, and discontent. And it was leaning into my mind body medicine training and what I had learned from the trauma work, that I had the resources and tools that I had gained from that. That's when the needle really started to move for my clients, really helping them come back home to themselves, rediscovering that felt sense of aliveness. So again, it was parlaying all the messiness that I personally had to go through, had to learn from, and being able to pay that forward to others so then they could feel more in charge of their destiny, their future, their health, in the ways that they could, because there's plenty of things that we can't control. But
Yes.
yeah, so that's a very long-winded way of like, what do I mean by how did my mess become my mission? Is you go through a lot of hard times and you realize, but there is a light. There is a light. And how can I guess, broadcast that light,
Yes.
let it shine on others so they can see that their path can be illuminated as well.
Well, when I first came across your website and I was learning more about you, and I was searching because there are so many women within my menopause community that don't or aren't making the connection between the hormones and the stress and all those things and the way that it is showing up in their skin. And I think they're just kind of disheartened because you look in the mirror and you're like, that doesn't look like me anymore. Like, I look old and I look tired. And what can we learn about our hormones and the effect it has on our skin?
Yeah, I know. It's like they say it's just hormones, just age, that your skin, will adjust. That's just normal. And both what they don't tell you is like normal can still feel like a betrayal, right? Like how,
Yes.
the glow you used to have starts to fade, and how the breakouts feel like these, old ghosts that are returning. And it's not just right what we're seeing in the mirror, right? And the skin that may look unfamiliar. It's that felt sense of feeling like a stranger, your own body, and wondering what's happening to me. And so connecting those dots from like how our sex hormones influence our skin, well, understanding that estrogen especially plays a significant role in skin and hair health. So estrogen is, I guess, the skin's architect. It plays a significant role in collagen formation and the production of hyaluronic acid, which keeps our skin youthful and plump. But we're spending thousands of dollars to get injected into our face. Estrogen creates naturally. And it also plays a significant role in the hair growth cycle. So our hair grows in 3 different phases: a resting phase, a growing phase, a falling out phase. Estrogen really amplifies the growing phase. This is why for women who have gone through pregnancy, or individuals who've gone through pregnancy, if they've noticed that their hair during that period of time is more lush and full and glossy, and then they give birth and all of a sudden significant hair shedding, they feel like they're losing their hair, it's because of that dramatic drop in the influence of estrogen on the hair growth cycle. And so in menopause, perimenopause, what we know actually is progesterone goes down first. So progesterone supports estrogen in skin health and hair health. Progesterone, specifically hair health, I should say, I know, I don't know if you've heard this from women in your community, but they might say, like, I feel like I'm going bald, I'm growing a beard,
Yes.
WTF.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Correct.
yeah.
Hmm.
And this has a lot to do with the fact that progesterone does decrease first. So progesterone plays an important role of balancing the androgens. So there is an enzyme that converts testosterone to a more potent form, and progesterone blocks that conversion. And without the influence of progesterone during the perimenopause, menopause phase of life, there's a relative imbalance, right? So this androgen dominance, this is what we often see in PCOS.
Hmm.
See it in perimenopausal women as well. So if testosterone can keep getting converted to its more potent form, what that does on the scalp is it miniaturizes the size of the follicles. So hairs get finer and thinner on the scalp. That's why we get the widening of the part.
Oh.
On the face, it has the exact opposite. The influence of the androgens actually makes the hairs coarser and thicker. So going bald, growing a beard makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. But when you're the one looking in the mirror, it doesn't feel
It
so
doesn't,
good.
I know. And then estrogen starts to go down right after the progesterone. So now you've had a little bit of the miniaturization, the thinning, and then the lack of estrogen's influence on the hair growth cycle. So you're not having as robust growth. So it's a compound effect. And then the androgens are still the last to go down. So they have the most influence. So um, it doesn't, I know it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily make it feel better, but at least you know like what is why what's happening is happening. And does hormone replenishment therapy directly counteract that? The research is still out, but it certainly can support it. We know for sure that use of estrogen replenishment and progesterone helps with, especially vaginal tissue and integrity because the role that estrogen plays on collagen production, and especially in the vaginal tissue, skin becomes a little bit thinner, more friable, more irritated, less hydrated and moist because of the lack of the hyaluronic acid influence. This is why sex can become painful. This is why urinary tract infections become more frequent, because the supportive connective tissue that's holding up all the structures is diminishing. So I don't know. I think I just got lost in all of that, but
No, no, you didn't, because I
it
think,
does make sense of how your skin plays into the role that hormones
yes.
have, and the compound effect of stress on that, because again, the mind and we didn't talk specifically about this, but the skin and the brain are embryologically linked. They're in direct communication all the time. And so your skin is both a target and a source of the stress response. So stressors in all its form can amplify and exaggerate the symptoms and signs of what you're experiencing naturally.
That's why you say the skin is a messenger.
It totally is a messenger, and it's also a billboard for what's really happening beneath the surface.
Do you have any specific, signs, or when you're talking to a woman who's going through menopause and she's concerned about her skin, what is something that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, it varies, right? So I think because of how we were conditioned, the signs of aging, fine lines, wrinkles, and all of that, I mean, some of it we can minimize. We know that upwards of 80-90% of visible signs of aging is attributed to UV exposure, and air pollution can contribute to hyperpigmentation. So some of the things that we can do is, how do we protect our barrier with moisturization, sunscreen. I always prefer mineral-based sunscreens because I find that they're better tolerated, less irritating to the skin from babies on up through all the way through adulthood.
Yes.
Um, and looking at other factors that can affect skin health, like our lifestyle factors. Sleep is a big one, right? So things that we're
It
looking.
is a big one.
So, I mean, I think if we're talking about, skin care, I mean, it depends on what's showing up. The general signs of, like, if your hair is, then your skin is looking a little bit more dull, a little bit more sallow. Skin cell turnover has slowed down, right? Some of this is, yes, as we mature, the speed at which things repair and regenerate may slow down, but we can support our body's abilities to maintain as much of a semblance of regular rhythms as possible by tending and attuning to, again, the environments that we put ourselves in, inside, outside, and in between. So the outside are the tactical, strategical things that we should be looking at, right? Lifestyle factors. So, are you protecting yourself outside? People always harp on dermatologists saying we make people frightened of going out in the sun, or we tell them don't go out in the sun. And that is not true, right? We know that the sun can create DNA damage, reactive oxygen species like that damage your DNA. And many people may not know that skin cancer is the most prevalent cancer in the US. There are more new cases of skin cancer diagnosed
Oh,
each,
I did not know that.
all other cancers combined, that, yeah, most people don't. And and part of it is because it doesn't get a lot of attention, because thankfully skin cancer, if caught early, is mostly superficial. So most people say cut it out and forget about it, right? But the bottom line is that if your skin is showing that it's had enough damage to create a tumor, that means that the rest of your body has also had enough exposure to things that may impede its capacity to function optimally. There was actually a study, fascinating study, that I just saw yesterday. It's pre-publication, about, again, the mind-skin connection. They're embryologically linked. And this particular study showed that the way that we take care of our skin can impact cognition, mood, and memory. Because when our skin is inflamed, when the barrier is inflamed, right, the skin has its own hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's both a target and source of the stress response. It's a neuroimmunoendocrine organ, meaning it can produce stress hormones, it can produce inflammation, and it communicates with the rest of the body. If the skin is inflamed, those inflammatory signals are circulating throughout the body and cross the blood-brain barrier into the brain. So that can impede memory and mood. So moisturizing your skin, using sun protection, is now believed to be able to support brain health. So this skin isn't just some glorified canvas to put makeup on or clothes on, although have fun with that. That is so fun. It is like your greatest asset, ally, and your largest protector. And taking care of it from a place of curiosity, what's going on? How can I offer it support? Compassion, even if it's got some blemishes, doesn't mean it's a flaw. That's a signal that something, some other system, maybe it's the skin itself, needs some TLC.
Yes, yes. Okay, because just for me personally, like when you find a new lotion, or your hands are really dry and you put something on and it feels really good, it does have an impact on you, at least a little bit emotionally, because you feel like you are caring for yourself in some way.
Right. And it goes beyond that. So our skin has thousands and thousands of sensory nerve endings. And there's a particular type of nerve ending on our skin called a C-tactile afferent fiber. So these CT fibers. And they have been found that when we especially respond to gentle downward stroking, that they are in like direct communication with the parts of our brain for emotional regulation. And the sense of touch also releases the love hormone, oxytocin. So it's Yes, the elegance of the serum or the moisturizer itself, how it smells, how it feels on the skin is really important. And you can amplify the impact by how you apply it, right?
Mm.
With presence, slowing down, with intentionality, and leveraging these amazing nerve endings that we have on our skin that are in direct communication with our brain to help us feel good, right? And look good. Because when you, that it's so true. When we feel good, we look good. That glow, that felt sense of, being at home, that aliveness, that vitality, that connection to self. So yeah, it's so interconnected.
I'm glad you said that because I've never really thought of it that way before. I didn't think my skin had anything to do with the way I feel emotionally. But you explaining it like that, yes, makes a lot of sense to me now.
Yeah, I mean, that is the whole premise of the work that I currently do. There's an entire subspecialty of dermatology called psychodermatology, which is psych is the mind, derm is the skin, right? It's the intersection of skin health and mental health. And they are intimately connected because the mind and the skin are embryologically connected. They are in direct communication. And again, central nervous system, our brain has this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, our stress response. So does your skin. So skin health and mental health are not separate. And this is why so many of the men and women come to me now because they've already seen 8 dermatologists. They've already been in talk therapy for 10 years and they're not getting better. And that's because we're treating them as separate versus they're intimately involved. And we know that chronic and traumatic stress can trigger and exacerbate skin conditions and also be a result of living with a visible skin condition. So, how do you deal with the stress? How do you manage it? Because stress is a normal adaptation of our biology. We are meant to handle stress, but some of us haven't been taught the tools, skills, and resource to really navigate the new stressors that our modern world has, thrown our way. And that can affect our physiology and our psychology. So that's the work that I do is helping people understand, connect the dots, helping them understand that what's showing up makes so much sense within the context of the environments that they find themselves in and being able to support themselves through it, right? Not to immediately change it, but to hold space for, yeah, this is really hard what you're going through. Like, I can't tell you how many people who maybe it was a divorce, maybe it was a death of a loved one, maybe it was losing their job, their kids going off to college, and they don't realize how that transition and that shift has impacted their stress levels because they're so used to operating at such a high level of stress. Like it's just
Yes,
normal.
yes, and unfortunately, sometimes for women in midlife, a lot of those things come together at the same time.
Totally, totally. And that's really hard. And just to normalize it, not to pathologize it or make it wrong, but how do we support you through that? This is a really hard time. As a midlife person, you might have aging parents, you might have kids leaving the nest, you may be changing careers, finding yourself, your relationship with your partner that you thought you were going to be with forever. You just have gone down different pathways, and that's okay. Or can you rediscover each other, right? Like all these
Yeah.
different things, and they all dovetail. And, we talk about like Dr. Dan Siegel has called it our window of tolerance. I like to call it capacity because I think we can tolerate a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily serve us. Uh,
Yes, I think capacity is a better term. I use that one a lot, and I feel when I am at full capacity, it's
right?
less about tolerating something. It's just
Right. Because you
having
can tolerate
room.
a lot of stuff, right? But that window is very dynamic. There'll be times of our life when, you know, we've gotten enough sleep, we're eating well, we feel supported by our family, and that window is wide open so that if, the bills come, the emails are flooding the inbox, it's like, yeah, that sucks. I'm a little activated by it, but I know I'll get through it. But then you add on bills for college, fights with the partner, aging parents, and like the window is just shrinking. And we find ourselves going out of that window. And we can either be in that hyper aroused state where we're anxious, mind spinning, heart racing, inflammation, everything is flaring. It feels awful. And then there are times when that's going on for too long. Our resources kind of burn out, or our default, because we've tried that and that wasn't working, we go the other way and we go to shut down and freeze. And then we're, instead of feeling anxious, we're chronically fatigued, fibromyalgia flares, depression, and it feels helpless and hopeless. And it feels like there's no way out. And we can ping pong between those two when the window is really small. So the invitation is recognizing where you are and doing your very best not to beat yourself up for that. And getting really curious, okay, what do I need to help myself be here right now and start to move forward? So I always think of the nervous system like an elevator, and each floor that the elevator stops on is a different nervous system state. And just knowing what floor are you on. So the top floor, one of my clients called it the penthouse. That's where the window of capacity is pretty big. Like you can, there are stressors, but you know that you can handle them with a little bit more ease. You can stay present, you can stay grounded, you feel connected, right? If you get cues of danger, emails, everything happening all at once, the elevator moves to that middle floor. That's your survival floor. That's fight or flight mode. That is mind racing, anxiety, overwhelm, things are flaring. And our first instinct is to seek help, social engagement. Who do I look for help? If nobody comes and we feel like we can't fight, we can't get away, the elevator, in service of your survival, all of this is in service of your best interest, or what your body thinks is in your best interest. That elevator is going to move from the survival floor down into the basement, the conservation floor. We are going to conserve the resources that we do have just to keep living. So this is where we feel like we're just going through the motions. Instead of feeling anxious, we feel depressed. We're kind of stuck. And the problem for many, I don't say it's a problem, but the challenge or the reality for many of us who deal with chronic health issues is our elevator gets stuck between the middle and the basement floor. And we're ping-ponging between anxiety, depression, worry and overwhelm and shutdown. And it feels like we have no way to move up towards the penthouse. And so the work that I do is helping people recognize where they are, because you can't do anything if you don't know where you are. And then teaching the tools, skills, and resources to help get that elevator moving again. And this is where on social media, if you've heard a lot about like vagus nerve activation or nervous system healing, if you think of our vagus nerve, which is the longest cranial nerve, starts at our brainstem, innervates face, throat, lungs, heart, organs of the belly. It's like the motor for the elevator. Because that vagus nerve, what most people may not know is the bulk of vagus nerve information that's being sent is from the body to the brain. And it's the vast majority of the information that's being sent from the body to the brain is what tells your brain how to give instructions to every other organ system in your body how to function. Do we need to still be on high alert, or can we quiet the alarm bells, right? Your nervous system is like your personal surveillance system, always scanning for cues of danger or threat, as well as safety. So the invitation is, we're primed to look for the danger cues. We're really good at that. The invitation is, can we curate, offer cues of safety? And that starts with just looking around your environment, colors, textures, shapes that offer your eyes a soft place to land, right? Taking a breath, slowing down. It doesn't have to be big, like having your favorite beverage on hand, even if you don't want to drink it, right? Especially for those of us with social anxiety. Having something to hold, of like an anchor, like, I got you. I got you. Right? So just sometimes it's just these small little offerings that don't require 20 minutes of meditation or going on some retreat. They're real-time practices that we can offer ourselves to be with where we are in the elevator. And then once we kind of acknowledge that, don't shame ourselves for like recognize, notice and name it, then you can say, okay, now that I've kind of been with that for a second long enough, how do I get my elevator moving? Because the goal isn't to be in the penthouse all the time.
No, no, because that's not realistic. We can't,
Not.
but for that woman who does feel stuck, and I could see that visual of the elevator doors that when they're stuck and they just don't want to open all the way,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah. I think number one is you recognize I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I think part of it is we are so disconnected, mind and body, that we don't recognize what's happening. We just think, this is just what it is, versus recognizing, oh, I'm stuck in a state of like overwhelm or hyperactivation, right? So like, what do I need to do to help move that energy through, right? If you're feeling anxious and overwhelmed, if someone tells you just calm down and breathe, okay, you might just want to knock their block off, because that is not,
Right?
we don't have the capacity to do that. So maybe what you need to do is, how do I need to move that? How do I need to deal with this pent up energy that I have? And sometimes that's my favorite is, just shaking it out or putting on my favorite song and dancing, going for a walk. Sometimes just tensing up your muscles, like instead of fighting it. This is where a lot of our suffering comes from. We resist the fact that we are in that moment. We're going to push it away instead of maybe leaning into it a little harder. If my shoulders, I notice my go-to is like, my shoulders are always up by my ear. So I constantly am kind of readjusting my posture.
Yes.
And so what can be really helpful is, what if I actually leaned into that more and shrug, 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 and then let it go? I feel a much greater release when I'm willing to go into versus try and pull away from. So sometimes when we're in those moments, it's knowing how to support yourself to be there. So then once you kind of release a little bit of that tension, you're like, okay, now I could take that deeper breath. Now I can start to try and bring more calm into my system so the elevator can move up, right? What we want is that fluidity and flexibility, because there are times we need to mobilize.
Yes.
Our sympathetic nervous system is what helps us be driven and purposeful and dance and be creative. So like, we want that, right? That's a normal state to be in, as well as the basement. This is where we have blended states. Being in the basement with a little bit of the penthouse is where intimacy and total chill and flow time comes in, right? So like, there is no bad state, but it's understanding where you are and knowing, well, what can I offer myself to make sure that I allow for whatever is here to be here, to move that through, so then the elevator can start moving when it's ready.
Is this what you call the somatic skincare? Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, a lot of the practices. So it's this idea, right, that the skin and the mind are intimately connected, and the skin is basically in relationship with everything we think, feel, and do, right? So we're talking about those environments inside, outside, and in between. So somatic skincare is that exploration of what is our relationship to the things that impact our skin, our relationship to ourselves, our thoughts, feelings, limiting beliefs, our relationship to stress. How do we view stress? How do we know when we're stressed, and understanding how stress plays out in our own life? Understanding our relationship to things like sleep and movement and nourishment, not just primary food. And then the actual practice of touch and how we use our skincare products, right? So it's a very comprehensive approach of skincare, I should say, like caring for the surface and what shows up on it, but also who you are.
Yes. Have you ever had someone come to you and say, "Well, maybe I just need a better lotion"?
Oh, well, that was when I first started doing this. I mean, I think that this is a little bit, now that psychoderm is getting, there's a lot more research on it. I think people are understanding, but that was always the first thing, like, well, what cream do I use? What cream do I use? I was like, well, I can give you lots of recommendations, but I can assure you that it's probably not going to help what you're really here for.
Right.
Sometimes we have to meet people where they're at, right? If you are really interested in reducing your fine lines, wrinkles, and hyperpigmentation, of course, I can make some recommendations. I don't have a conventional derm clinic anymore. I'm not really diagnosing or treating, but I can certainly make recommendations. But when we then have the conversation of what is it about the fine lines, wrinkles, and the dark spots that bothers you most, that's the invitation, right? Because it's, I don't feel sexy anymore. I don't feel like myself anymore. I'm not really communicating with my husband anymore. I'm like, let's talk about that.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because then any investment that you make, this is where, even aesthetic procedures, right?
Hmm.
They're expensive. Some of them can offer great results, right? But it's never a one and done. So it's an investment of time, it's an investment of resources, and you want to get a return on that investment. And I can't tell you how many women, they look fantastic, beautiful.
Yes.
And you ask them, well, right, how do you feel? And they're miserable, right? So you don't want to look gorgeous on the outside and feel crappy on the inside. That's not a good
Right.
return on your investment. You want both. It's a both and. So I think that, really being curious about your intention and your why. Why do I want this? Right? What is it about this? And who do I want it for? And if it's not really for you first, that's a really great opportunity to get curious about why. And what, right?
Yeah. Yes. Because if you're not even putting yourself first in those moments, I think that probably says a lot about why you're feeling the way that you are.
Right. And not from a place of like shame about it.
No.
You deserve to feel amazing. And if doing these procedures will help you feel amazing, go for it. But if you do the procedures and you're still like, it's not enough, or like I'm not happy, or it didn't achieve what I wanted, then there's an invitation to go beneath the surface. And I find that women who come to me often, immediately, as soon as we just ask a few questions, it becomes very clear that it's never about what was happening on the surface. Like, I mean, yeah, I can just think of one of my clients with urticaria, chronic hives. And again, another, I feel badly. I'm not, my modern medicine is amazing, but she had been to a lot of dermatologists, had been on every antihistamine, maximum dose. Within the first 2 sessions, it became so clear. And this is common why hives have been described as an emotional allergy. It's so clear that throughout her life, she had to quiet her voice. She could never really speak up for what she needed, what she wanted, right? And so her skin was speaking for her. It was like, in many ways, of I want to be seen, but don't see me kind of a thing. And so that the hives come out, they go away, they come out. And so she was breaking out in hives 3-4 times a day, every day. And as we kind of uncovered this, immediately she was off her antihistamines, maybe one pill every couple of days, and she was breaking out in a hive once every couple of days after just like 2 or 3 sessions. Because not always, there are, right? It's never just the one thing. There are many layers, and it could
Yes.
environmental, right? Because we're talking about inside, outside, in between. There are things that we can explore. But many times, it really, what's on the surface is just an invitation for exploring, like, where your needs weren't met, what needs to be met. Yeah.
That is just, it's so interesting because I'm trying to picture this poor woman, struggling through this. And I'm sure if she had gotten one more prescription, it was just going to be one too many. But the inside does affect the outside.
The inside does affect the outside. And the outside, based on that recent study, can also affect the inside, right? So it's a both and, right? We need to use those yummy moisturizers and protection to protect this barrier of ours, because it does have a direct through line to our internal systems, and especially our brain in terms of mood and memory. So it's a two-way communication.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I've learned so many good things here today. I was like, oh, we could keep going for another 45 minutes, but if a woman wants to learn more about you and learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way in which they could contact you or see more of your work?
Yeah, so my website, drkirabarr.com, is a great place. There's some blogs just to get a sense of how I approach this work. And on my website, as well as on social media, there's a link to it as well. And on Instagram at Dr. Keira Barr, there's a quiz. So we've talked a lot about stress, and many women might be like, well, I'm not stressed. Well, I have a quiz that you can take in 2 minutes or less that talks about different stress patterns. And it really helps you see, well, where are the stressors in your life? How might they be showing up? And where they're showing up, giving you exact tips and tools to implement right away to help support the stress, right? Not get rid of it, not push it aside, but to support it. I think that's a great place to start, is taking the stress patterns quiz.
Well, I think I'm going to go take that now. But I do want to say thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom on this topic. I think you add just a fresh perspective to something that I think a lot of women struggle with.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Listen, I always tell every client of mine, I'm like, I do this work because I need to do this work. Like, I am right there with you, walking alongside you as a midlife woman. So we're in this together.
Glad to hear it. Again, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Real Insights. If you want to hear more about how other women take better care of their skin and themselves, order your copy of Empart, Real Stories, Real Wisdom, Real Menopause on Amazon today. And don't forget to join the conversation at joinempart.com. Until next time, remember that menopause is a journey, but you're not alone.